New polling. We talked about the polling yesterday. Donald Trump is dusting Ron DeSantis. Still fun to see. Now, here's the other thing. Donald Trump, or Joe Biden for that matter, could have a heart attack in the next year. So you don't know. But
and if he's the nominee, I think it's a better chance that Biden wins, but he's still the nominee. And that's a scary proposition in and of itself. Trump could be the president once again.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not to just discount that.
I just got 2 IMs here. How do you know how good that blade feels with that luscious beard, Sam? Just asking questions. To be honest with you, like, this is it. Right here, right here, right here, and right here.
Yeah. But I now have 2 people in my life using that, and they're full shavers, and they're loving it. So.
I'm woken from home says, honestly, shout out to Henson. Glad they sponsored the show. I've suffered from awful razor burn my whole adult life, but it has dramatically improved since trying the Henson shaver.
There you go.
Anyways, okay, so Biden polling numbers out. The thing that I find interesting about this is just a reminder as to like sort of what people base their votes on. Joe Biden would not have been my choice in 2020. Well, he wasn't in the primary, but I don't know who I would prefer as a nominee in 2024.
Not exactly spoiled for choice.
No, but I mean the bottom line is it is very difficult to unseat an incumbent. The entire party apparatus obviously is in favor of it. And the biggest complaint about Biden, it seems, at least from the core Democratic voters, is that he's old, and he is.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. The Biden is in a neck and neck race with Donald Trump. They're tied at 43% at a hypothetical rematch in 2024. This is according to a Times Siena poll. But if you can believe it, that's actually, there are numbers. There's an improvement here for Biden. 30% of the voters who said they plan to vote for Biden in November 2024 said they hoped the Democrats would nominate someone else. Just 20% of Democrats said they would be enthusiastic. Another 51% say they would be satisfied, but not enthusiastic. But this is up because at one point, like several months ago, 65% of Democrats did not want him to be the nominee. Biden had the backing of 64% of Democrats who planned to participate in their party's primary, an indicator of soft support for an incumbent president. 13% preferred Robert Kennedy Jr., which is frankly, I mean, shocking to me. And I think that I would like to see what his support would be in a Republican primary, because most of his campaigning, it seems to me, to be geared towards that. 10% chose Marianne Williamson, which I think is a pretty good showing. Among Democratic poll respondents who have a record in voting in a primary before, Biden enjoyed a far wider lead, 74 to 8%. He had 92% to 4% among those who voted in a Democratic primary in 2022. So in other words, the most enthusiastic Democratic, conscientious Democratic voters support Biden overwhelmingly. Mm-hmm. And this is just sort of weird, though, when they start to like interview different individuals. A common view toward Mr. Biden is illustrated in voters like Melody Marquez, 54, a retiree and a left-leaning independent from Tyler, Texas. Ms. Marquez, who voted for Biden in 2020 as the lesser of two evils, can understand that, was not happy about his handling of the pandemic. It's unclear what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could go both ways.
Okay, well, blaming him for inflation and a tight labor market. Yeah, now Matt just went like, what? Still, she would vote again for Mr. Biden, who is 80 years old. This is what gets, she's a left-leaning independent. So it suggests to me that she's actually probably voted for Republicans more, because if she's 54 and a retiree, she obviously is, her work situation, her financial situation, probably not too bad. I mean, that's 2 years younger than me.
Yeah.
I can't retire right now. She was unhappy about a tight labor market. Why would you be unhappy about a tight labor market if you
She's
are
probably a small business owner.
there's
right?
something like that?
Yeah.
You know, like this is the
Collecting
thing.
passive income. Maybe she's a landlord.
People don't want to work anymore.
It is a weird
I'm a
weird
Democrat.
thing. I mean, it's a weird thing that the Times include this type of like sort of like this is a common view. It
They
seems like a
love
very odd
that,
view.
though. They love that. They love finding, a voter that's going to be a little bit unique and make their story easier.
And also be
right?
a small business.
And but she goes on to say, "I'm sorry, but both of them to me are too old." She's right.
Yes.
Joe Biden to me seems less mentally capable age-wise, but Trump is just evil. He's done horrible things. I mean,
That's true.
yeah. Mr. Biden has recovered significantly from last summer. Again, last summer, Times Siena poll, same poll, found 64% of Democrats said they did not want the party to renominate him, including 94% of Democrats under the age of 30. Now, only half of all Democrats said they did not want Biden to be the nominee in 2024. Mayama Langam, 38, a government analyst from Atlanta who described herself as a political progressive not aligned with the party. Again, like they're looking for people who describe themselves as sort of like your center, left of center voter, said Mr. Biden's tax policy had been skewed to favor the wealthy while the middle class paid more than its fair share. We're kind of smushed in the middle. We're taking the brunt of taxes for everybody. Now, this is just like, this is why I'm reading this is to let you know just sort of like how these bizarre narratives get fixed in people's heads. There have been, well, first of all, what she's saying is completely not the case. There is no Joe Biden tax policy for the middle class that has changed whatsoever. The only changes that ever existed to the tax policy would have been in a, they didn't pass anything. It would have been in the Inflation Reduction Act, the CARES Act, the American Rescue Act, or the Secure 2.0 Act. In the first one, the American Rescue Act, the only changes in tax policy were child tax credits that literally paid people who had kids $300 a month per each kid.
Yeah, but that's been sunsetted or it expired for over a year at this point.
Yes.
So what could she possibly be complaining about?
Well, it's possible that she perceived that as a
hike.
As a hike. I'm not sure. I doubt it, because it doesn't code as a tax, right? Like it's just you're not getting a payment. The Inflation Reduction Act had a 30% tax credit for solar or like geothermal or wind power or whatever it was. There were also tax credits for EVs. Like this is all like tax breaks. There were subsidies for insurance under the Affordable Care Act that were extended. There was a 1% tax on the value of stock buybacks by corporations.
Who can object to that?
There was a 15% corporate minimum tax. There was never a tax hike on anywhere near the middle class. There was changes in required minimum distributions from your pension fund, but that was all to the benefit of people who wanted more money. There are adjustments to the 2023 tax brackets, but that has to do with like the top bracket. And that is a 2.6%. Oh, no, that doesn't happen until 2025. I mean, so it's just bizarre because there has been no change to this woman's taxes, personal taxes, under Biden, yet she's convinced that there is. And it just gives you a sense of like, this is what...
Like what motivates people is inherently bizarre, often contradictory, nonsensical. But for the most part, I don't really hear much about the use of inclusive language for trans people. Is that really affecting people?
It doesn't seem to be into the polls. Ashlyn Cowan, 27, a research scientist from Nashville, said she wished Biden had been more aggressive about canceling student loan debt. This at least is like, she's an informed voter. Even before, and then it goes on to say, nevertheless, Cowan said she would back Biden in a race against Trump. You have Trump that has shown characteristics I'm staunchly against, and Biden just not being the greatest person to do the job. Ultimately, Biden's is not going to harm the country as much as I believe Trump would, which I think is a pretty straightforward take on this. With that said, and I think it is, I think there's an argument to be had about Biden not being aggressive enough, without a doubt. And there are people I think have legitimate arguments as to maybe Biden could have used a different tact in terms of dealing with the Supreme Court. I think there's also an argument that it was going to fail at the Supreme Court regardless. But I think there's still some arrows in that quiver.
There's messaging arrows in the quiver.
Without a doubt.
The problem is like that. Biden has done some good things.
Well,
but it's not been communicated in any meaningful way.
Also, with student loan debt, what like Dayan and the prospect got is like they should have done the method they're doing now immediately in the first week.
Without
then we
a
would
doubt.
have got to this.
Exactly. And so getting to that, it is now the SAVE option, I guess it is. The SAVE student loan repayment plan is now live. The website, it's in beta, but it is worth going there now. studentaid.gov/LDR, IDR for income-driven repayment. It's on the studentaid.gov site. Here it is. This is, and supposedly the Biden plan, the original plan, which frankly should have been $50,000, but if the Supreme Court had okayed Biden's plan, it was projected to provide $400 billion worth of relief. If everybody eligible for this plan, the income-driven repayment plan, signs up, it's projected to provide $360 billion worth of relief. But it is, those dollar figures may be somewhat equivalent, but you got to keep in mind, getting a $10,000 or $20,000 debt relief today is worth more money to the individual than it might be 10 years out. Does that follow? Obviously,
yes.
You want to defer, you want any money you can put in your pocket today, essentially, or get lopped off. But nevertheless, instead of paying 10% of discretionary income a month toward undergraduate student debt under the previous pay-as-you-earn retirement plan or repay plan, borrowers will eventually be required to pay just 5% of their discretionary income under the SAVE plan. Those who make less than $15 an hour won't need to make any payments under the new option. And here's how it works. Also, they are changing the definition. So reduces what undergraduate loan borrowers pay monthly from 10% to 5% of discretionary income. Increase what is considered non-discretionary income protected from repayment. So, in other words, not only do you pay only 5% of discretionary income, what constitutes discretionary income will be decreased. So you'll be paying half the percentage on a lesser amount. And there will be no monthly payment required of borrowers making below 225% of the federal poverty level, which is for a family of two. That means if your family of two makes less than $44,000, you are required to make no payments. If you're a family of three, $54,000. Family of four, $67,000. You will be required to make no payments whatsoever. After 10 years of payments, instead of 20 years, if your original loan balance was $12,000 or less, you have no more balances. You have no more payments to make. That's going to help like a lot of community college students and a lot of people who went to a college, probably a for-profit college, and dropped out relatively quickly. The new application supposedly takes 10 minutes or less, and you can sign up now. It is a beta system, so still in the beta phase. So they're still sort of like testing the thing, but you can sign up for it, and it will count. It's just that there may be a bug or two.
It's something in the interim while they try to hopefully do what they initially should have done that Matt referenced earlier, which is using the Higher Education Act.
Yes. Again, unclear whether, but I think they probably want to work this through the system, get this done, try and get it unchallenged, and then launch that. But who knows? But that's just a reality. But at the very least, what's encouraging is that at least that 27-year-old knew what she was talking about.
Yeah.
The others were secretly business owners that they called Democrats. Like that's why it's not helpful. Like we need more information than I think of myself this way on election day. That's less relevant. Do you own a business? Like do you have student loan debt? Like that's actual relevant information.
Right. And we should say let's see. The income caps on the IDR plan are abysmal. $67K for a family four is poverty. This is worse than the income cap from the initial plan. No. It's not an income cap. That is, if you make less than that, you owe no payments. It's not a cap as to whether you get relief. The relief happens for everybody. But if you make less than $67,000 for a family of four, you have no payments. So it is not an income cap. So I want to make that clear. It is not an income cap. It applies to everyone. Also, payments not made in the first 12 months will not be considered delinquent because they're ramping up this thing. Is this only apply for undergraduate loans? I'm not sure about that, but I think so. But here's the point about the polling. It is national polling, and largely that is largely irrelevant. Joe Biden is going to get more votes than Donald Trump. The Democrat is almost more than likely going to get more votes than the Republican nationally. I don't think that's going to change.
I mean, when's the last time that it didn't? 2004?
2004.
Yeah. And the one before that was
not the case.
Not the case.
Al Gore had more votes. This election is going to come down to about like a half a dozen states. It's going to be Arizona. It's going to be Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia and Wisconsin, Nevada, maybe North Carolina. That's basically where it's going to play out. And in Georgia, remember, Biden won by what? Like 1,000 votes? And there's a story today, in the Times. And again, hard to know.
But it does match with what Democrats have been saying they're concerned about, which is black turnout. It was down 10% in 2020.
Biden won by 11,000 votes. in Georgia last time in 2020. But there is a, well, I mean, I think there's probably a lack of enthusiasm across the board for Democratic voters, but black people make up the core of the Democratic base, frankly, and particularly in Georgia, they're 32%, almost 33% of the electorate. If in 2020, according to the Times, if less than 1% of black voters had voted for Trump or stayed home, Biden loses. And the real issue is staying home. Like, how do you get people to come out when it is hard for them to see any demonstrable change? Now, you can argue Biden tried. Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. I mean, I think there was I'm not going to relitigate the fact that I think that they should have come in after March, after passing the American Rescue Act, and they should have done it quick, and they definitely should have. And Biden's like sort of playing footsie and with the Republicans to make it look like he was being bipartisan, and then allowing Sinema to push a plan and then splitting that up, et cetera, et cetera. I think it was at best incompetence, at worst just a way of like sort of pulling back on their ambitions.
Well, he wanted to bring Republicans in.
I mean,
and that's so when we read those quotes from all those voters, that's what they were thinking about, right? Were the Republicans pulled into the negotiations on Biden's domestic?
You'll read a bunch of general election stuff. Like, I just want them to get along and do stuff.
Right, but the nature of the nature of them getting along, like the daily minutia of the drama on Capitol Hill, is not changing that persuasion, right? I mean, they generally want you to get along, but no one remembers when or why people didn't get along.
Right. No, it's just not the way that government generally works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the situation there. It's early. It's super early. And we'll see. Again, in a month, into the fall, we'll invite some candidates on. Right now, it looks like, Marianne Williamson is out there, and I wouldn't mind talking to Cornel West as well to just get an idea of like what policies it would be nice if we're more centered in our political discussion, but that is not the era that we're in at the moment. In many respects, the failure of getting a Bernie Sanders elected in the primary, still sort of resonates. And, from an electoral standpoint, the left part of the Democratic Party is still sort of regrouping, I think. I mean, I don't even know who, it feels like we're still a decade off from having, any type of like real actors there. But with that said, there is just simply no doubt that the Democratic Party hasn't moved in that direction over the past 10 years. I did not anticipate Joe Biden in proposing the Build Back Better bill. And there is no reason for a sitting president to propose something that was going to fail so spectacularly as his proposal did. There's no political value in that. I think he's still recovering, frankly, from the failure of getting that on board. And the further we get out from it, the less there's this perspective of his incompetence.